The European Union has just warned Elon Musk that being too lax on Twitter moderation could get the platform banned in Europe. But one of the European Union's top lawyers has issued a warning to Elon Musk over his takeover of Twitter, and now those in the US Congress are looking at this bill thinking similar things. Now how Congress can prevent Elon Musk from turning Twitter back into an unfettered so-called disinformation machine. A new European Union law is a roadmap for how to put the onus on social media companies to monitor and remove harmful content and hit them with big fines if they don't. Well, interestingly enough, guys, when I first reported on Elon Musk taking a large stake in Twitter back on April 4th, I also in that video pointed out that simultaneously the Canadian government was tabling Bill C11. So as you see here, I talked about Twitter taking the largest stake position, and then meanwhile, the Liberal government in Canada is attempting to rebrand and reintroduce the controversial Bill C10 into the new equally draconian Bill C11. And this is very, very similar what we're seeing simultaneously happening potentially to Congress in the US and what just happened with a new law in Europe. Meanwhile, guys, also, political conservative commentator Dave Rubin recently put out a tweet to which Elon Musk actually replied to, and then within the 5 minutes of that tweet, give or take, Elon Musk tweeted out a Tim Pool meme, and this is a pretty big deal for those of us in the field of independent media moving forward. So we're going to look at all of this, guys, and much, much more in this video. But before we do, I'd ask that you check me out right here at subscribestar.com/pressfortruth. This is like a Patreon alternative because Patreon terminated my account, and all those subscribers were lost in the blink of an eye because they're censoring my content, and it's essentially a financial attack. So if you want to help me counter that, guys, please check me out at subscribestar.com/pressfortruth. I currently have 94 subscribers. I had over 300 at Patreon. So I'm still largely affected by that ban. Let's see if we can get that up to 100 people today. That would be fantastic, guys. Links for that are located in the description below. Please check it out if you appreciate my efforts to bring you this info. All right, guys, let's just jump right into it. The EU has just warned Musk that being too lax on Twitter moderation could get the platform banned in Europe. Twitter agreed to Elon Musk's offer to buy it for $44 million on Monday. The billionaire has publicly stated his interest in buying the social media platform is rooted in his ideas of free speech. And it's kind of funny how every time they talk about Elon Musk talking about free speech, they put it in quotations, when what he's really talking about, he had to pin to his Twitter profile, and it says, by free speech, in quotes, I simply mean that which matches the law. I am against censorship that goes far beyond the law. If people want less free speech, they will ask government to pass laws to that effect. Therefore, going beyond the law is contrary to the will of the people. Very simply put, he's absolutely right about that. Now, I've reiterated time and time again, I don't trust Elon Musk. I don't like necessarily these billionaire oligarchs who are able to wield so much power and influence on society, but at the same time, what's happening right now in the Twitterverse is not only necessary, but it's potentially going to lead us to this fork in the road of where censorship might take a wild turn towards serious shutting down of accounts, or to being wide open, giving the powers that ought not to be a very big issue to deal with. So let's continue. Musk has previously described himself as a free speech absolutist, and his comments have left Twitter staff and others wondering whether he will relax the platform's rules on what content is allowed to stay up. EU Commissioner for the Internal Market, Thierry Breton, warned Musk against getting too lax on content moderation. In comments to the Financial Times, Breton told the FT he wanted to give Musk a reality check on his plans for a more relaxed content moderation. We welcome everyone. We're open, but on our conditions. At least we know what to tell him. Elon, there are rules. You are welcome, but these are our rules. It's not your rules which apply here, Breton told the FT. Breton was one of the driving forces behind the Digital Services Act, a new package, EU legislation that passed just on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, bringing in stricter laws on how tech giants moderate content on their platforms. And as I said, this just passed on Saturday, while simultaneously, interestingly enough, the Canadian government was working on Bill C-11. Now, as I pointed out many, many times, Bill C-11 is really just the new iteration of Bill C-10. And Bill C-10 is the iteration of the failed attempts at censorship online over the past decade through pieces of legislation such as CISPA and SOPA and ACTA. There was a whole bunch of them where they said they were going to be cracking down on, child porn online and things of that nature, which sounds great, obviously. It's like, yes, of course we need that, but this is all just a ruse to go after content creators, because what the Bill C-10 proposed was an amendment to the Digital Broadcasting Act that would put someone like myself at Press for Truth on par with being a broadcaster comparable to the CBC, or something of that nature, therefore putting me at the behest of the regulations of the CRTC. And the way they would determine who is a broadcaster and who isn't goes by a couple of criteria, namely, how much money are you making, and what's the size of your reach, or in other words, how big is your audience? So if you're having any kind of success in countering the propaganda of the mainstream media outlets, and actually your voice is starting to reach a bunch of people, that's when you will be considered a broadcaster, and these new laws will be able to shut you down. So I've been warning about that, for really over a decade, since they've been trying to push these things through. And here we are. And now the U.S. Congress is starting to pick up on this new European law, and it looks like they're going to push for this idea of censoring Twitter as well. Over the weekend, a story came out of Brussels that many may have missed. The 27 member states of European Union reached an agreement on a new law requiring big online platforms, including social media companies, to police hate speech and disinformation more effectively. Again, this is all just effectively, the child porn stuff, the hate speech, the disinformation campaigns. It's really just a ruse to shut down voices who go against the status quo. Under the EU's Digital Service Act, European governments now have the power to ask web platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to remove any content that promotes terrorism, hate speech, child sexual abuse, or commercial scams. The platform will also be obliged to prevent the manipulation of services having an impact on democratic processes and public security. The time of big online platforms behaving like they're too big to care is coming to an end, says Thierry Breton, the EU's commissioner for the internal market, declared. If the European authorities see a surge of online disinformation during a crisis, such as the ongoing war in Ukraine, they will be able to order social media companies to take proportionate and effective measures. So here they're already saying European authorities see a surge in online so-called disinformation during a crisis, like to give the example of Ukraine. Guys, that literally means that when people like myself put out pieces such as this, the truth about Russian aggression in Ukraine, the federal liberal government has just announced they're strengthening more sanctions against individual Russians due to Russia's so-called aggression towards Ukraine. But who's the real aggressor here? In this video, Dan Dicks of Press for Truth goes behind the headlines, delving into the history of Ukraine and Russia's relationships with NATO, the US, and their allies, to reveal a situation that looks nothing like what the MSM is presenting. Turn off your TVs, stop being conditioned for war, and support the real independent media like Press for Truth. This is precisely the kind of information that they are literally referring to as what's going to be considered so-called disinformation in the time of crisis, guys. Do you really want the big tech oligarchs being the gatekeepers of political thought and opinion, basically treating you like a child, suggesting that you're not capable of doing your own due diligence into the things I say, and that they have to protect you from my dangerous words? This is just mind-boggling. This is something we've been dealing with for, as I said, over a decade when it comes to protecting the free flow of information and free speech online. So it continues here. They will be able to order all social media companies to take proportionate and effective measures to counter the threat. So again, they use the the allure of protecting children, for example, as a ruse to go over voices that are upsetting to the little snowflakes on the left. Now, this is really interesting, guys. Dave Rubin, as I said, he's a conservative commentator in the U.S., and he recently said this: "Hey, Elon, as long as you're digging, check into how the New York Times and Forbes, etc., bought their Twitter followers to fake influence. New York Times has 53 million followers and rarely gets 50 retweets. I could post a banana emoji and a picture of an 80s sitcom star and get more. See the next tweet." And indeed, here he has a picture of a banana and an 80s sitcom star, and as you can see here, there's over 5,000 retweets. And let's look at exactly what he's talking about. Here is the New York Times. They have 52 million followers here, and look at the average retweets they're getting. 30 here, 42 here, 17 on this one, 6 on this one. It certainly doesn't add up when you compare it to Dave Rubin, who only has 1 million subscribers, who gets over 5,000 retweets in just a few hours. So here we see Musk chimes in, and he says, "Yeah, I noticed that too. Pretty weird." That's a big deal that he would respond to Dave Rubin in that way and say, "Yeah, I noticed that. Pretty big deal. Pretty weird." Remember, guys, this is the new owner of Twitter saying this. And I noticed within about 5 minutes, give or take, of this tweet, "Yeah, I noticed that too. Pretty weird," Elon Musk put out this Tim Pool meme. So when he was on the Joe Rogan show, and he kind of tag teamed with Joe Rogan against Jack Dorsey and their kind of head of, communications at Twitter. And here it says in the meme, "Here's an example of Twitter's left-wing bias," says Tim Pool. She says, "We have to take the context into consideration." So he said, "Twitter's interpretation of the context is affected by their left-wing bias." So she says, "I would need to see an example of that." So he says, "Here's an example of Twitter's left-wing bias." And so the circular logic goes round and round, and that's exactly how it played out on the show. But just the fact that Elon Musk himself is tweeting this is a big deal. And of course, Tim Pool responded by saying, "Yo, Elon Musk, come on my show, bring Starlink." And you know what? At this stage in the game, I really wouldn't be that surprised if Elon Musk goes on Tim Pool's show. That's obviously going to be a huge deal for someone like Tim Pool, who I've worked with many times. He follows me on Twitter. He's interviewed me a number of times. I've interviewed him a number of times. We've worked together a few times. So just to see someone that's in the same position that I am, able to potentially interact on the issues of free speech openly on the internet and possibly in person is pretty encouraging, I must say. It's pretty cool. So I just wanted to bring some of this stuff to your attention today, guys. The EU is passing laws that are going to try to restrict the free flow of information online, trying to crack down on so-called too lax moderation. U.S. Congress is now toying with a similar idea because of this European roadmap. And as I said, the Canadians are simultaneously trying to table new legislation that's basically the same as old legislation that already got rejected because of how draconian it is. They're now trying to pass it off once again, hoping you just won't notice and it'll get, swept through under the rug and ascend to royal assent and actually become law. These are the things that are going on right now, guys. I wanted to bring it to your attention. Once again, if you appreciate my efforts to counter all this propaganda and to bring you this information, don't forget to check me out right here at subscribestar.com/pressfortruth. Again, we got 94 subscribers here right now. I had over 300 at Patreon before I got canceled from the cancel culture because of my views. Let's see if we can get me back up to 300, but at least maybe 100 today would be greatly appreciated, guys. So that's all for today. Don't forget to click that thumbs up button. Share this video with your friends and family who you think need to see this the most. And stay tuned, my friends. We're going to have more video reports coming very soon. This is Dan Dicks reporting for Press for Truth.
We all want truth. truth will set you free, free, free.